Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. I'm Marc Givler. Got Kevin Noon still with me here today. It's our second episode of the day. We talked about the big signing of Dominic Kirks earlier today. We said we'd be back here with our class grades. I'm going to have a full write-up on the site. It should be up. If you're watching, listening to this, it should be up already, where we'll put this video in there for people who want to listen or watch. But I'll also have a written version of my class grades and my breakdown of everything that's happened in 2024 and kind of put a bow on the class. But so that's what we're here to do today. Kevin and I are going to go position by position here, grade the class, give our reasons why, kind of talk through that. Happy to have you guys in the comments below kind of chime in on, give us your class grades and grade every position if you want, or tell us where you think Ohio State did the best, where Ohio State maybe could have done better. Whatever, let us know in the comments, your thoughts on this thing now that it's all settled. But Kevin, let's dive right into it. Let's start with the most important position in sports, the quarterback position. Buckeye sign Aaron Noland in December, and then Julian Sayin becomes available in the transfer portal, and they quickly get him after a cup of coffee down there in Tuscaloosa after the Nick Saban retirement. Kevin, grades for the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm not in third grade, so I don't do A+ and things like that. 100 is still an A in my book, and I'm gonna give him an A. It would have been hard not to give him a high mark just with the class of Aaron Noland, but then you throw in Julian Sayin. This is like the best case scenario for Ohio State, one that was completely unseen of where Ohio State ends up with two of the top national quarterbacks, guys that competed well on the national stage and the Elite 11 circles, all of that. It really gives Ohio State a bit of a leg up. And I think that bringing two in the same class, you get them competing against each other, and maybe there's a little bit more of that relationship there, that we're not immediately facing one of these two guys saying, well, I've been beat out, I'm going to head out to another destination. But, two very talented quarterbacks, different skill sets in some regards. I mean, Aaron Noland, the big lefty out there, that's still going to take some getting used to watching all of that, just with the lack of lefties in the Ohio State system through the years. But this is as solid of an A as I can give.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of do the third grade thing. I at least do like B+ and C+.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
But yeah, I'm in A+ territory here. Essentially, well, first of all, I mean, you got two 5-star quarterbacks in the same class. I mean, that's almost unheard of. I would imagine the amount of times that's actually happened, you could probably count on one hand. But you also look back and, they had Dylan Raiola and he decommits, which feels like 5 years ago at this point. So much has happened since. He decommits and you're left wondering, oh my goodness, who are they going to get? They didn't really have many options. They had kind of stopped recruiting guys. Other guys had committed elsewhere. They were slow playing some other guys early. And so, we're sitting here at the time like, wow, how are they going to fill this void? How about filling it with your top two targets? Because the top two targets, as soon as Raiola decommitted, were Julian Sayin, who they tried to flip from Alabama, and they just couldn't get him off that commitment. And then Aaron Noland was the guy they went all in on and offered. And they ended up with both of them. So just incredible job and some good fortune, of course. I mean, if Nick Saban doesn't retire, this doesn't happen. But that's, you got to take advantage of your breaks. And they did that here. And so, yeah, A+. I don't really know. I mean, there's not much nuance to add here. They got two 5-star quarterbacks and their top two targets once Raiola decommitted. So that's a home run.
Not going out on a limb by any stretch of the imagination with our grade on this one.
This one's pretty straightforward. All right, let's move to running backs, which is a little more nuanced. James Peoples, Sam Williams-Dixon in the class. Peoples we saw in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl. We both really like James Peoples. We've seen a lot of Samuel Williams-Dixon over the couple of years. He's played his senior year right basically in your backyard at Pick North. This, I think I could argue a few different ways, Kevin. Where do you see the running backs in this class in terms of grading the position?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we are going to go running backs or wide receivers, but I'm going to make the same comment. Are we grading this on what they have, what they could have had? I mean, with having a decommitment, losing Jordan Lyle to Miami, I mean, this really was setting up to be a year of where taking 3 backs, that's kind of crazy. But with, I think the way that I feel, especially after seeing James Peoples in San Antonio and getting a chance to spend a little time talking to him and certainly seeing him go through drill work, and these events are not necessarily super suited for running back work. It's just not what it is. And what I've already known about Sam Williams-Dixon, I don't think I can give him a straight A just because of losing out on the player, and I might be a tough grader. I was kind of kicking around a B plus, and then I started just thinking back about San Antonio, and I'm going to say an A minus. I'm going to say an A minus, like by a razor over a B plus, because I think that James Peoples is somebody that's going to come right in, and while he's got 3 backs ahead of him with obviously with Trevion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins and Dallin Hayden, I think that he's somebody who can do some things immediately as maybe kind of a change of pace guy. It's going to be a long season. I mean, obviously you're going to have a couple of backs that you're trying to keep healthy for the duration of the season, something that just in college football has been kind of rare, just with the amount of physicality of the game. And then Sam Williams-Dixon, I think he's somebody that may need a little bit more time due to a transfer ruling. He wasn't able to play the second half of the season at Pick North. So he's gone a minute without playing competitive football. But I really like the tandem. There's part of me that didn't want to look like I was being too lenient a grader, that was going to go B plus, but I just think that James Peoples is going to shock a lot of people. I think he will shock a lot of people, and that's why I'm going to sit there and say this is like a 90.1%, which just falls at the bottom rung of A minus.
Yeah, I kind of had the same internal debate that you had. I'll go B plus. I'll be the bad guy. I love James Peoples. I think, again, I'm with you. I think he can play early if they need him, and I think they should. I think you should be doing everything you can to kind of cap the touches Henderson and Judkins get, especially in games where you're not really threatened. And I think James Peoples can play early. I think he could even give him some kick returning juice if they needed it. Big fan of his game. The reason I'm going to go B plus for 2 reasons. One, obviously they had Jordan Lyle, who I think is an absolute stud, and they weren't able to get that signed. Flipped to Miami late in the process, so you came up 1 short there. And you also kind of had this idea of Sam Williams-Dixon as almost being kind of a Xavier Johnson type of player. So you always have like 1.5 running backs in my mind in this class, where you needed at least 2 to 3. So I like Sam Williams-Dixon. I think he can do the things that Xavier Johnson was able to do. I agree with you. There's going to be a learning curve. He didn't play very good competition his first few years of high school, went to Pick North, got only a half season in there. So I think there's going to be some, I mean, that's almost a definite red shirt. But I think B plus is still a very good grade, but I will go B plus just because I just feel like there was one piece of the puzzle missing there. That brings us to wide receiver. The Buckeyes only signed 2, but they're both 5 stars, and one of them is generational. Of Jeremiah Smith, Mylan Graham, 2 5-star receivers. They lose Jeremiah McClellan late in the process to Oregon. They are not able to kind of find that 4th guy they were looking for before then. So this one's interesting. Kevin, where do you go on this with only 2 players, maybe 2 short of their quota, certainly 1 short of their quota, but they're both 5 stars?
Yeah, I really should be punishing them for getting 2 when they wanted 4. Obviously, as you'd mentioned, losing Jeremiah McClellan, not being able to sway Chance Robinson away from Miami. They We're in on another big receiver out of the DMV area that ended up committing to Florida State because of what Florida State's been able to do with its big, tall receivers. But when you have a generational player in Jeremiah Smith, and honestly, Mylan Graham probably could be the number one receiver in the nation in 85% of other classes. I mean, 2024 was kind of a special year with a couple of the guys. You end up getting Ryan Williams reclassifying, some other things going on. But let's just sit there and say that they're, the number one and number three receivers in the nation, number one and number four receivers in the nation. Sorry, ESPN, I'm not really going to give your recruiting rankings that much thought. I'm going to move over as somebody's coming into the house right now, and I don't want them to walk into the shot. So
we don't want any Urban Meyer situations.
Yeah, I certainly don't want any of those, but I'm going to still say it's a solid A. It is a solid A because it's Jeremiah Smith. I mean, seriously, it's Jeremiah Smith and it's Mylan Graham, and I think these are two guys that are going to be able to immediately demand playing time. Certainly Jeremiah Smith, and I have no reason to doubt that Mylan Graham won't be right there. I mean, it's going to be a really crowded room, but if there's a position where they could afford to miss, I think it is wide receiver, with having Brandon Ennis and Carnell Tate and Bryson Rogers, who dipped his toe in the portal only to come back, along with returning guys like Emeka Egbuka. This is a very solid A, and I probably would have gone against my thing of saying, all right, we are going to do an A+ if they would have gotten Jeremiah McClellan or a fourth guy or something like that, but that just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, I'm going to go A+ just because I can't sit here and call Jeremiah Smith the best wide receiver I've ever seen at the high school level and then deduct points for the rest of the group for not getting a certain number. I'm going to go A+. The other thing here is, so I was very much in the boat a year ago that Carnell Tate was the best wide receiver in the 2023 recruiting class nationally. There are some subtle differences here, but I think Mylan Graham is a similar talent. I think he's that caliber of talent. Now, he didn't get to transfer to IMG and kind of go through that program, so I think he's probably not as physically prepared to come in early and just kind of blow the doors off the way Carnell Tate did. I think there would be maybe a slower curve there, or a longer curve, however you want to put it, for him to become an impact player at Ohio State. But I think he's that type of talent. So I just can't in good faith take away from those two, just because I think they're so good. So I will go A+, despite again them wanting 3 or 4. And boy, after watching TJ Moore in San Antonio, if they could have got that one early, because they were in on TJ Moore, they were probably, at one time they were in his top 2 or 3. They faded there towards his decision, but boy, would that have been something, because TJ Moore was awfully good in San Antonio as well. So they were right there for a couple of these other guys, but I think the 2 they got are special. So tight end was another 2 running backs, 2 quarterbacks, 2 receivers, 2 tight ends. Max LeBlanc, Damarian Witten out of Glenville. Kevin, Keenan Bailey's first haul there at tight end. How did he do?
I think it was a very solid class. I mean, Max LeBlanc is a bit of a question mark. I mean, he did nothing on the interview circuit, so I never had a chance to talk to him. I wasn't sure that he was a real person for quite some time. You put on his tape, I mean, he's a solid tight end. I think he does a lot of things that Ohio State wants out of its tight ends. No, he's not Brock Bowers or anything like that, but that's not what they were looking for in that position. And then you have Damarian Witten, who I guess is a tight end. I mean, is a jumbo athlete. I mean, he's capable of doing so many things. But does he fit in? Does he fit into the bucket of being a tight end? I mean, I don't know. I just know I like what I see out of him. Tight end is just such a weird position, just off the bat for Ohio State, because it's just not a position that's utilized the way that it is at other programs. So, I mean, I really like Witten. I really like LeBlanc, but being a position that maybe is a little bit lower leverage, I mean, I don't think Ohio State did anything wrong. I'm not like, oh, well, Ohio State would have been so much better off if it would have landed this kid or that kid. I mean, it's tight end. I don't know. I'm gonna say a B plus, even though I really like Demarion Witten for being so versatile in what his skill set is, and so much of it is outside of the realm of being a tight end.
Yeah, I'm gonna go A minus. I like LeBlanc. I think he'll compare somewhat favorably to Cade Stover. I think they're similar body types coming out of high school. So I think they're getting a really solid player there. I think Demarion's dynamic. I've talked about that for a while. I've been on the Demarion Witten train for a very long time, and if they find the right ways to utilize his speed and athleticism, he is going to be, in my opinion, a tremendous weapon for them. Will take a year or two. I thought he was going to enroll early. He's playing basketball now, and so he's going to be a summer arrival. He's got some weight he's going to have to put on a little bit, but I think in a couple of years he's going to be a pretty dynamic player. I talked to Ted Ginn Sr. about him, and Ted Ginn Sr. says he's one of the 3 most unique athletes to ever come through Glenville, and Ginn's been there for like 50 some years. So that's certainly saying something. So I'm going to trust my eyeballs on that one, that he's going to be really good. So I'll go A minus. And great, in my opinion, a great first haul by Keenan Bailey. I mean, that's kind of he was obviously an unknown, even though he's been on the staff for forever. I think a lot of people were waiting to see, it's nice that you're the secondary recruiter on these receivers that Brian Hartline's getting, and that you help, everyone talks about how great you are and how much you help them with recruiting and everything, game planning and everything else, but let's actually see it in action. And he goes out and recruits 2 good tight end prospects, and Cade Stover has one of the better years we've seen an Ohio State tight end have. Really in a really long time. I mean, good first year for Keenan Bailey. Everyone's favorite position group now, offensive line. And this will certainly generate, I'm sure, some comments. There's no way we're going to please everyone with these grades. There's just no way. There's too many wide-ranging opinions on this. So that's why you get to go first, Kevin, and be the guinea pig here. How do you grade this offensive line class?
Yeah, I know. I'm going to get shouted down one way or the other. Ohio State, solid class of 4 offensive linemen, was not able to land the Jordan Seaton type, that 5th dynamic 5-star Paris Johnson type of player. Just wasn't able to happen. You get the Armstrong twins, which, I think history is going to go back and look very favorably on this class, in my opinion. I think Ian Moore is somebody that he committed so early, people are sleeping on him. I don't think anybody really knows a lot about Gabe Van Sickle, to be quite honest, just because, okay, he played in the state of Michigan, but he kind of played, he certainly wasn't playing in the Detroit Metro League or anything like that. I have a hard time going much lower than a solid B, like an 84, 85%, if we were really putting numbers on this, just based on my feelings about Moore and the Armstrong twins, and still the uncertainty that maybe I have on Van Sickle. They come up one short in their number. They come up one short in not getting the superstar. But I just really would have a hard time giving them a B minus or lower based on what it is they landed. Now, if it was a 3-man class, if they would have moved away from Mark Nave and never added anybody else there, then I could sit there and see myself getting into the C plus type of range. Is Gabe Van Sickle worth 6 or 7 percentage points? I don't know, but I think Ohio State going and making sure it gets to at least 4 and not really reaching, and I feel that there may have been some other options they could have gone to reach. I think that they kind of addressed some needs, and I'm going to go a B, but on the low end of a B.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. Even as we sit here and talk about it, I'm like, oh, B minus. What am I going to do? Here, I'm going to say B. I'm with you kind of on the lower end, not really near a B plus. So I'm at like 83 or 84, whatever that would be. Here's my reasoning behind it, because I know the cycle was frustrating for a lot of Ohio State fans to watch kind of Baker and Seton and just kind of one after the other kind of go by the wayside. I think if you would have asked Ohio State fans when the cycle started, like, okay, guys, here's what's going to happen. No names, no nothing. Rewind the clock 18 months back, whatever it was, and say, okay, we're going to sign like a borderline top 100 guy from the Midwest, from out of state. We're going to sign 2 guys from Ohio. Both of them are going to have at least a 4-star rating somewhere. One of them is going to be a high upside tackle. And then we're going to get a late bloomer who ends up being bumped to a 4-star late in the process. And we're going to flip him from another Big Ten school. And he's going to be kind of our flex guy in the class. I think people would have had I'm not saying everyone would have been doing jumping jacks and been like, oh, Justin Fry is the best recruiter ever. But I think people would have been like, yeah, that's not bad. That's solid. And so for that reason, I am going B. And I think it played out in a frustrating way. Again, Baker, Seton, whoever else you want to throw out there. Did they offer the right Ohio guys? I think they did. I'm a big Deontay Armstrong guy as a future franchise tackle. I think he actually has that ability. I've just watched him get a lot better the last 2 years and get bigger and stronger. Ian Moore's very good. Will he play right tackle, left tackle, guard? Don't know yet, but they'll find a spot for him. I think he's a guy who can play like year 2. I don't think he's a project. Van Sickle might be a little bit more of a project. Devontae Armstrong, I think, is more of not a project. I think he's more of a high floor guy. Maybe not, first, second round draft pick type upside, but I think he's like a solid kind of a plug and play guy in the interior. So yeah, I certainly have been critical of O-line recruiting in the past. They didn't get their number. It's been hard for me to go between B and B minus. The B minus just feels like it's kind of a slap in the face to Ian Moore and Deontay Armstrong. Yeah, they're really playing. So I'm going to go B. Yeah, if they would have got a Jordan Seton or a Brandon Baker, or whatever, that's an A class, but they didn't. They didn't get to 5. I do think they upgraded from Nave to Van Sickle at the end. Nave didn't have a particularly great senior year. Van Sickle obviously got very hot there at the end with the ranking services. Has I think more versatility. He's like a swing tackle guard. Nave was pure guard, so I think you're getting a little more value there. So yeah, I'll go B. And now we get to be told in the comments how we're huge homers. Probably. Maybe not though.
Well, the homers are not going to like my DL grade. I already know.
That's the other. Well, homers aren't going to like. I don't think homers are going to like our B grade on this. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here. I'm fascinated to see how that's processed by our viewership. All right, defensive line.
Everything I've said about not punishing units for not hitting their numbers thrown out the window here. Ohio State not only did not hit its number, it didn't come close. And it's hard to believe that I am going to really drill a class that has Edric Houston in it. Edric Houston is a fantastic player. We had the chance to see him play in his spring game. We had a chance to see him go through drill work at the All-American Bowl. I've watched his highlight footage. There's no doubt what Edric Houston is. I certainly am not taking any sort of shot at Eric Mensah, former Virginia Tech commit. I'm certainly not taking any sort of shot at Dominic Kirks, former Washington commit. 2 guys that were Power 5 commits, highly coveted by many schools, but Ohio State was so far off of its number that you can do fantastic on all of your testing numbers. If you don't turn in any homework, you're screwed. You're not gonna make your grade. Well, Ohio State didn't turn in its homework here. So whereas landing Edric Houston is like getting a 99 on your final project, you didn't show up for a lot of other parts of it. So I'm going to give him a C. I'm going to give him a C because I am that down on where the numbers were. Ohio State had to turn around and scramble to get Dominic Kirks. We were sitting on signing day looking at a very real possibility that Ohio State could have only signed one on the original signing day because Edric Houston was up in the air and just signed a class of Eric Mensah. And I don't even want to judge what my grade would have been at that point. But I'm gonna say a C because I cannot grade them any higher based on the body of work.
I am going to go C+. And I've been between C+ and B-. And I just think I just heard an audible gasp from everybody watching this when I said B-. I just like Edric Houston that much. It's so hard for me to – it's almost the Jeremiah Smith thing. It's not quite to that point, but it's almost the Jeremiah Smith thing for me. It's like, how could I not go at least B- on a class that has Edric Houston in it? But you're right. I mean, they're at least too short of their number. I think they only got one defensive end in this class. I don't think they have multiple defensive ends in this class, which is where they really needed the numbers. I'm a big Dominic Kirks guy. I just don't know. I mean, Mensah, I think, is a guy who maybe is more of like a Ty Hamilton. I don't know that he's a Tyleik Williams or even a Mike Hall who's going to show like the ability to take over games at times. And that's fine. I mean, there's places for guys like that for sure. But Edric, to me, is the only one of the three who's like a true game wrecker. And they're so short on the numbers, and they miscalculated again on the out-of-state guys. This could have been an A+. You get like Marquise Lightfoot and Justin Scott. You hold on to Justin Scott and you get a Marquise Lightfoot or something like that, and it's an A+. But I'll have to go C+. I kind of want to go B-, but too short on the numbers, at least. Short on defensive ends, where he was what you really needed. Yeah, I'm going to go C+. I think they got to do better hitting their numbers here this year. It's kind of now or never. I think they got a reprieve with all the guys that came back, maybe unexpectedly. But now you're looking at a class in 25 is going to need probably 6 or 7 bodies.
Right.
So I think they've put themselves in a bit of a hole here. So, yep, C+. All right, linebackers.
The whole time you were talking there, I've been trying to do my math on linebacker and just how much I want to piss off Ohio State fans. I like both the linebackers. I think Peyton Pierce is very talented. I think that he is probably further along in his journey. Gabe Stover is, the pedigree is fantastic. I had the chance to go and see Big Walnut play last season. Had the chance to see him at the All-American Bowl. He still doesn't know what he doesn't know about the position as somebody who's moved down from safety to linebacker. I mean, what is really going to be the final verdict of what his best position is going to be in the collegiate game? I don't think anybody's really quite sure. It was not a position that I ever felt that was going to be, they need to take 4. I mean, it's not a number case. I think the case, though, is that there's just a big kind of question mark on when will Stover be seasoned enough to make an impact. And then on top of that, I think Peyton Pierce is somebody who certainly has the skills and the DNA to be able to get it done. But with that being said, Ohio State only playing the 2 linebackers, it's going to take a little bit of time, and that's going to be fine. I go round and round about this. I'm gonna say a B minus. I don't know. I don't know what they could have done to make it better, but there's just not enough wow. There's just not enough juice in it that to get me to grade it any higher. And maybe I'm just being completely unfair, but they're my grades, so I'll do what I want.
I'm gonna go B plus. I really like Garrett Stover. Long term, I think he's going to be a tremendous. I just love the way he plays. He plays 100 miles an hour, and they just haven't had enough of that at linebacker the last 10, 15 years. I think Peyton Pierce is a very safe, one of the safest bets in this class, I think, barring injury. Good Mike linebacker prospect, can stay on the field all 3 downs. So I think they've got a kind of plug-and-play Mike there. I think both these guys will be starters. I think Stover's going to be a captain at some point. So I'm pretty high on it. They would have taken 3, and that's why I'm not going a little bit higher. You put Kingston Villanueva on here, and it's
way different. Yeah, it's way different.
Weren't able to pluck him away from Notre Dame. Looked like they were going to get him at one point. Didn't happen. Divine intervention, or mom.
Yeah.
Depending who you believe. So yeah, I'm pretty good at B plus. I like the 2 they got. I think they'll be fine there. I think they'll be just fine. I think Laurinaitis did a solid job, and obviously Stover was going to be a Buckeye no matter what. But Peyton Pierce was probably going to go to Notre Dame. So that was a big get for Laurinaitis. When I write this up, I may separate like defensive ends and defensive tackles. I may separate like corners and safeties, but we're going to just rate the defensive back class because we don't want to. This will be a nice 30, 40-minute episode. It doesn't need to be an hour and 15-minute episode. No. So we're going to put the secondary together for the purposes of this video. I may do it separately on the written component. But yes, the secondary, Tim Walton, obviously Perry Eliano no longer at Ohio State, but had his print on this as well. But really, I think the story was Tim Walton and what he was able to do at corner. But, Kevin, your thoughts on the secondary?
Yeah. I guess to split them apart just a little bit for the sake of the conversation, but not getting too deep into it. The corners, it's just an amazing class at corner, and that's just always a position of need. And to be able to get Aaron Scott and Bryce West and Miles Lockhart, I think that was just a huge get. Position, top players. Getting Scott and West, 2 in-state players, keeping them from going up north was even that much more important. I think on the other side at safety, I really like Jalen McLean. Ohio State's gone to New Jersey again for another thumper of a safety, and I think Leroy Roker is a little bit of a unknown. Sometimes you go and you get the guy, and you just have to kind of figure out what he is. But with all of that being said, I think that they did a very solid job there. I'm kind of on that A- line. I think just with the amount that I love their cornerback class, I'm going to give them an A because, again, we've talked about it with Edric and we've talked about it with Jeremiah. But when you sit there and you have just the 2 Ohioans with West and Scott in the same class, you're getting a lot of points right there. So yeah, I think I've talked myself into that A.
Yeah, that was kind of a decision I had too. I'm going to go A-. I'm probably the biggest Aaron Scott fan in the world. So this is not really a reflection on him or the corners at all. But, they had a couple of opportunities at safety that didn't work out. Obviously, KJ Bolden being the big name. But I think they wanted kind of impact safety. I like McLean. I think he's got a chance to be pretty good down the road as more of a kind of an in-the-box, strong safety type of player. But Roker's interesting to me too. If you read his bio, it reads like Malik Hooker, but that's like blasphemy because Malik Hooker played that position better than anyone's ever played it, in my opinion, at Ohio State for his 1 year. So there's high upside there, but I just don't know if there's enough of a slam dunk there for me to go A. So yeah, I'm gonna go I'm going to go A-. Love the corners. Miles Lockhart fits in well there. I think he'll be a really good nickel type of player. And keeping those corners at home was one of the biggest things of the recruiting process when everyone was kind of scared about Michigan there over the summer. So I think that's a fair grade. I think, again, you add one more maybe highly rated safety into there, and I'm probably bumping them up to the full A or A+, but I think A- is a pretty good grade for that group. All right. There you have it. The definitive grades of this recruiting class. It'll be interesting. It's always going to be interesting to watch these guys play out. We'll see a lot of them here in about a month. It's as spring ball kicks off. Looking forward to seeing who shows up in great shape, who's had a good winter. Can't wait to do it. We'll be covering it all on BuckeyeHuddle.com. Hope you enjoyed our class grades, but keep it locked in here. We're going to have all sorts of more recruiting coverage here during the month of February as we gear up for spring ball. And make sure you're either subscribe us here on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle or on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Go ahead and subscribe there. And it's a great time to join BuckeyeHuddle.com. Get in on the premium message board, or we're running recruiting intel every week. We got camps coming up. I'm going to be on the road for the next 5 weekends for recruiting coverage. Kevin's going to be with me for some of that. We got Southern Swing coming up just around the corner as well. So if you're into the recruiting stuff, then you probably are if you're watching this. Great time to sign up and get all the recruiting information you're looking for. So appreciate everyone watching and listening, and we'll see you again soon.